Hello, everyone. Happy HD Awareness Month. And thank you so much to Huntington's Victoria for giving me the opportunity to be part of this event. My name is Jaclyn Skinner, and I am from a small town in Ontario, Canada. I am the youngest child in a family of 4 children. I am the world's proudest aunt, a fur mama to my dog, Elliot, a recent graduate with my master's in social work, and I love Justin Bieber. When I started to think about what I was going to talk about, I thought, what on earth am I going to say? I mean, I love to talk and I know things, but I don't have any deep, profound understanding of anything specific. The closest thing I'm an expert in is me. So I'm sorry about that. I come from a family affected by Huntington's disease, and I have known about the disease my whole life. Huntington's disease takes away so many things, and it impacts us all so differently. As we get older, we're constantly learning through education, through life lessons, or through people that we meet. When I think about my younger self, my experience with Huntington's disease, I wish I knew what I knew now. It would have made things make a whole lot more sense, and at times probably a little less scary. I know now that I need to talk about things, to hear others' experiences, because I find comfort knowing that I'm not alone and that there are actually other people who know what Huntington's disease is. My HD story begins with my OMA. My OMA was symptomatic before I have memories. I remember growing up, there was always something off in the way that she talked and the way that she moved all the time. But for me, that's just who OMA was. I remember spending time in the afternoon painting her nails, changing the channel for a soap opera, and eventually going to the nursing home with my mom to entertain her and residents. HD didn't really resonate with me as to what it meant to be at risk or how much it would change my whole life while I was growing up. My mom was one of 6 children that my OPA had, and more than half inherited the mutated gene, my mom being one of them. My mom found out her genetic status when my siblings and I were really young. My parents told me that they didn't want to tell us until we graduated because they didn't want to deter us from the way that we were going to live our lives, the way that we wanted to live our lives. I remember finding out my mom's genetic status. I was 17 years old, and it was actually said so casually and so unintentionally. We were sitting at the island in my kitchen talking about my OMA and being at risk. And I remember saying, I don't know. We don't know what our chances are. And one of my siblings said, yes, we do. Mom's positive. And I remember being shocked, but I remember being more mad that I was lied to other than registering what had just changed in my life. My involvement within the HD community at the time was non-existent. In fact, the only people that I knew with HD in their family were my cousins, and we all knew the same person, my OMA. It wasn't until my sister and some of her peers got together and created a group of young people dedicated to educating, advocating, and supporting each other. It was something that the society was lacking at the time: support for the next generation. I was voluntold to be a part of this group known as YPAD, and I'm forever grateful that I was. I started to learn more and more about HD, the impacts, the challenges, and its effect on entire families, more than the changes in just the person. It was at that time that I learned that in Canada, there was no protection for people against genetic discrimination when it came to insurance. So basically, if you were at risk or tested positive for HD, you could be denied insurance or charged a very high premium. Think disability, think life, which I thought was strange since those are pretty important pieces to caring for people or people living with HD. I swore that I didn't want to find out my genetic status because, like my parents, I didn't want it to change the way that I live my life. 11 years old this fall. Through my time, I helped the group evolve by helping to implement a mentorship program. So when someone just starting their HD experience can be matched with a trained mentor to speak to someone who is further along in their journey, and they can share their insight with that mentee. I advocated for national days for young people to gather from all across the country to create a community amongst people their age who understood what it meant to have or to be impacted by HD. I was able to meet the woman instrumental in advocating for a bill to be passed to protect our genetic rights. So now I'm not afraid of insurance. Being part of this group gave me the chance to go to the United States and take part in their conventions. I was able to meet, learn, and understand the miles this disease travels and how many people suffer. As experiences snowballed, I had the opportunity to volunteer with HDO, Huntington's Disease Youth Organization. I have been their cheerleader, their biggest fan since they started, and actually was part of the first group trained to be reps, or ambassadors as they are now. I got to spend 4 different weeks at their North American camps over 4 years. I got to meet hundreds of young people from all over North America, sharing stories and being someone they could lean on and give them a person I wish I had when I was younger. Meeting these people, being involved in this camp, changed my life. Coming back from camp in my second summer, I felt incredible. I felt that I had truly made a difference in a person's life. I had heard at camp, "I don't know how I survived this long without you," from one of my parents. And to be honest, I don't think I did anything overly special. I was just there. I was just honest. I remember going back to work and experienced my first anxiety attack that I recognized in me. I had these thoughts about how much people have gone through, what they have experienced, what they have survived. And I couldn't fathom why people at my work could complain over the most mundane things. I had this anxiety attack and remember calling a friend saying I needed to do something bigger. I needed to do something more. I took a few months off work to recover from a deep depression I went into. When everything changed, I received a phone call from that same friend I had called. And she asked, "Do you want to be a social worker?" And 3 years later, I am that proud social worker. I am that proud graduate, and I am working as a counselor to support people who are struggling like I have. Through these past 30 plus years of writing my story, there are a few things that stuck out that have saved me and allow me to keep writing. Find your people and let them in. I've had the experience where people disappoint you and walk away when they learn about HD, and that sucks. And I'm sorry if you've been there. Finding your support system is important, and it will evolve as you move through life. I have friends who serve different purposes, being uniquely perfect for different aspects of my life. My family is thankfully a decent group of people. My dad, my mom, and my siblings, my littles, ensure that I know how loved and how important I am. Being gene positive doesn't change who you are. If you are thinking about getting tested or have been tested, finding out your genetic status is just like finding out your blood type. You always had it, but until you dig a little deeper, Your blood will be blood, and your Huntington protein will be a Huntington protein. But if you find out your blood type, then you know more about yourself, meaning you know how to better care for yourself, and in the event of an accident, others know how to care for you too. Finding out your genetic status is terrifying, but it's not changing. So if you find out that your Huntington gene is mutated, that your gene is positive, then you know more about yourself, and you know how to better care for yourself, and if anything happens, others can help too. Self-care and self-compassion are necessary for survival. It will save you from an anxiety attack. It will save you from becoming resentful. And it will give you the recharge you need to get back to living your best life. I can't imagine too many of us letting our phones or our tablets or our cars run on empty. So why do we allow ourselves? And lastly, I want to leave you with this. Like any good author of a story, punctuation plays a vital role in how it's told. For instance, the author gets to decide if the thought is finished by adding a period to the end. Like this. I am affected by Huntington. Strong statement. But as authors of our stories, we don't have to let that be the final statement. The power of a semicolon gives an author the chance to change the feel of a statement by choosing to keep going. So much like life, you have the option to end a story, end the thought, end it all together, period. Or you can use semicolon and decide to keep going. Like this. I'm affected by Huntington's disease. I'm hopeful. Or, my name is Jaclyn, and my story is moving. Thank you.
Hi everybody, my name is Cat Martin and I have worked with Huntington's disease now for 23 years, and I'm so excited and grateful to be asked to present at today's conference. On top of being an HD professional, I am also an HD family member. So I grew up in a family with HD. I've known about it my whole life, and these two amazing people are my parents, and the little one with my mum is my little sister. So mum and dad decided very early on in our life that they would be very open and honest with us about things, and Huntington's was the big thing. I have a really, really positive experience about growing up with Huntington's. We talked about it whenever we wanted to. It was never hidden from us. And mum's ethos and dad's was very much, like, if we have questions, then come and ask them. And if they didn't know the answer, then they would try and help us find the answer. So the year I was born was the year my gran was diagnosed, and my gran's other siblings also had HD. So I grew up in this little tiny village in Scotland where lots of people had Huntington's because we were a big family. So people knew about it. I didn't have that experience of nobody knew what it was, and people were hiding it. Mum and dad were really open about it. So we grew up, we got to go and ask questions with the genetics team in Glasgow. We got to ask questions with mum and dad. But more than anything else, we just had a really normal, happy childhood whilst dealing with HD. As Gran progressed, I lost Gran when I was a teenager. And a few months after Gran passed away, Mum started showing symptoms and was diagnosed. But Mum had a really interesting attitude towards HD as well. So when she was found out she was symptomatic, one of her friends was diagnosed with terminal cancer. So this is them announcing to the world that they were sick. They were both sick, so they performed the Dying Swan Act at a charity fundraising night, and just enjoyed life. The big thing about our whole family's attitude towards this is enjoy the life that you have and make the best of it, and that's exactly what we've done. So Huntington's disease and me is all about these two people, really, and that's my mum and dad. They are everything that I am today. They never limited us. They always made sure that we were open to things. And I was probably a teenager again when I found out that that wasn't everybody's experience, and it drove my passion for working with children and young people, because the best start that we can give young people will absolutely continue on the rest of their lives. And I knew from my experience that if we had parents who were willing to be open and honest and deal with Huntington's together as a family, then actually it was much better for the kids. So throughout our whole life, we talked about Huntington's, we worked together, we had lots of fundraisers, and my family were part of establishing the Scottish Huntington's Association 31 years ago now. So it was a big part of our life, but always a really happy and really inspiring time in life. So we lost Mum in 2012 after an epic battle, but Mum had she had everybody that she wanted around her, and she got to say goodbye to people, and she chose to do it on her own way, and we had probably exactly what she wanted in life. And we went on living. So that's the kind of personal aspect of it. The kind of professional aspect of it is that I worked with the Scottish Huntington's Association and presented in 2007 to the World Congress this idea that we should work with children and young people, and kind of got told categorically it's a really bad idea, just let's not do it. And it kind of led to us doing a good few things, but one of the things that we did was we held in 2010, 10 years ago, last summer, the first ever European-wide camp. And this young man, Matthew Ellison, was one of the young people who attended that camp, and that's where I first met Matt. And Matt had this idea for an engagement platform that we could support and educate young people on Huntington's disease in a language that was their own, but also was more positive, that described Huntington's disease factually, but without it being something that would scare people, that would make them want to engage and find out more. And he met the young man in grey next to Tigger and Pooh, BJ View, who was from America. They met in Canada at the next World Congress and decided to start talking about it. So they pulled me in as the old youth worker person to kind of help them get started and stuff, and that's how HDO was born. And we officially launched HDO in 2012, but we had been working on it since the summer of 2010. And for Matt and BJ, it was a bit before that as well. So HDO was established. We made huge amounts of educational materials and looked at different languages. But the big thing that we did was that we continued this idea of camps being important, that bringing young people together and getting them to talk to one another with people who understood, people that they didn't need to explain Huntington's, people that was their own age, that were going through the same hormonal and emotional journeys as them, but also the added element of Huntington's and not having to explain how they felt and things. And that's what we've done. So we've done so far, just I think we're at camp number 11 now that we've done, although we've not had any this year because of the global pandemic, but they'll come back. And we were lucky enough, there should be a few familiar faces in these pictures. This was the first Australia-New Zealand camp that we did up in Queensland, and I can see Tiffany right away, and I know that Tiffany's been one of your speakers today as well. And these camps are really special. They're special for so many reasons, but the big thing is that we give young people the chance to just talk. And we follow quite a strict curriculum, although it doesn't seem that way. We actually really do. And we talk about everything. There is nothing off the table when it comes to these camps, and that's how it should be. Because everybody has choices. We can choose things, but we need the right information, the right education, and also the right people to talk to help us make some of these big decisions in life. In the camps, we're all split into groups and things. So this picture, I really like this picture because everybody looks really happy, but we're also holding jelly brains. And this was our way of explaining the treatments that are in kind of like process at the minute in clinical trials. And it was about how we get those drugs into the right part of the brain. And it's really important for us that we put the world's best researchers in front of young people and ask them the questions. And if you ever listen to some of the world's leading researchers who have had the joy to be at one of our camps, they'll tell you that it's probably the most nerve-wracking time other than defending their thesis, I think, because young people really are great at grilling our scientists and our researchers and our clinicians and pushing the boundaries to make them think more out the box. And that's why I love working with young people, because they will challenge. And one of the big things for me in all of this has been the change within the community. When I first started working with HD, everybody was terrified to talk about it. And of course, that wasn't my experience. But everybody was. They were terrified to talk about it. And over the last 10 years, there has been a huge shift. People are much more open to talking about it. But not only that, people want to talk about it. And there's still work to do. There's still gaps. There's still people who are hiding and are terrified of it. And that is absolutely part of their journey. And I understand their fear for wanting to talk about it. But we have a group of young people who are choosing to be different and choosing to speak about it and choosing to own their stars and to own their journey. And I'm really pleased to be part of that for some of them as well, but it is so exciting. And this is happening around the world. It's not something that's just happening in Australia and New Zealand. It's happening in North America. It's happening in South America. It's happening in Europe, and it's happening in South Africa. And really excited, it's starting to happen in the Middle East as well. So it is a global movement, and young people are front and centre to that movement. And if we can have young people talk about it, get the emotional support that they need, and get the education that will help them change that story, then we'll have healthier young adults, which will lead to healthier adults. And the one thing with Huntington's is if you're healthier, then it's much better for you. And that's what we're trying to do. So that's what all of this is about. And these are just a selection of some of our camp photos, some of our inspirational people. But at the heart of it, it's all young people. And just a quick word about research. So I have been involved in HD research my whole life. You know, it's been part of the discussion that we've had at home. We've celebrated all the exciting wins. You know, we celebrated in the 80s when they were looking at the genome and people were taking skin samples and blood samples and things, to the discovery of the gene in the 90s, to looking at the possible development of treatments that could work, that failed, and then into our recent history where we have real potential for some exciting treatments that I'm sure you have all been hearing about. So as part of that, this is the team in Glasgow who very kindly took some of my spinal fluids to take part in HD Clarity, but take part in Enroll. That's important to me. It's not important to everybody, but it's important to me. I might be gene negative, but I live with Huntington's every day. And as I keep telling the young people that I work with the right attitude, things can look differently. With the right perspective, things will look differently. And for me, Huntington's has given me more than it's ever taken from me. But even though Huntington's took away the most important person in my life, they took away Mum, who was my inspiration. She was my hero in lots of ways. And she is who I take forward in every step in my journey, because her legacy is part of me. But Huntington's took her away, but she still gave me more. She still gives me more, and Huntington's gives me more as well, because I've got to meet all of these amazing young people. I've got to meet all of these amazing people within the community, these fantastic scientists and researchers. But above all, I've become part of a global community who wants to change the lives of people with Huntington's for the better. So thank you very much for allowing me to just tell you a little bit about me and my journey. And I hope that we can meet again when all this drama is over. But yeah, feel free to ask any questions. Tammy and Ellie have all of my contact details. But thank you so much for allowing me to talk to you today.